If I was Dan, I would not mess with it. I'd be like, people died making this serum.
But that's such a kid thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, this kind of looks gross. M&M's.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Drink up, sis. Oh, no, the third series. Welcome back to Nostalgia Club. My name is Jino, and I'm here with my two co-hosts,
Victoria.
And Michael.
And today, we are on the hunt for the international treasure.
Something.
We're investigating. It's the 39 Clues.
Yay!
I can do that better. No, I can do that better. I
Okay,
can do
okay.
that better. I can't do that better. Continue.
This has come highly requested by several listeners. So, listeners, this one's for you. But I read this series as a kid. I read basically all of the first arc, and then I think I read a couple books in the second arc. Only upon doing research for this episode did I realize there were two more series after that and a special finale book. So this has been going on for a little bit.
Incredibly unsatisfying to learn that there are not exactly 39 books. Terrible.
That's what I thought at first. I was like, oh, they kept it going, so maybe there are 39 books. But then I was trying to remember, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that they found all the clues by the end of the first series, because I think I would have kept reading if they hadn't. Like, it would have felt very unsatisfying if they hadn't. So I'm pretty sure at the end of the first arc, they find out what's going on with these clues, what they're trying to figure out, and then the other arcs just continue from there.
For those who don't know, the 39 Clues is a Scholastic exclusive children's series about an international mystery hunt for an amalgamous sort of vague power with secret societies that will take over the world, control the fate of mankind. You're related to all the famous people that have ever existed. Everyone's related.
Everyone's a Cahill.
Everyone's a Cahill.
If you're a name brand, you're a Cahill.
It's like National Treasure if it got so many sequels, and instead of Nicolas Cage, you got two kids who are doing their best.
For this episode, we read books 1 and 2. The first one is written by Rick Riordan. The second one is written by Gordon Corman. Because the interesting thing about these books was each book was written by a different author. At least 14 different authors wrote this series or collaborated on this series. And so it's kind of interesting how you get sort of different voices for each book.
Mm-hmm.
But spoiler alert, I will probably talk about things that happen far beyond the first two books and a little bit beyond the first series. So if you don't want spoilers, don't listen to this.
Rick only wrote the first book.
Yeah, he only wrote the first book, but he helped develop the plot line for at least the first arc. I don't know how involved he was in subsequent series, though.
You got to get that Percy Jackson name brand power on that first book.
Yeah.
And then just let it fly.
I think the story is that Scholastic basically approached Rick and said, hey, we want to write a series that teaches the kids about geography and history, and can you help us develop something for that? And he was like, okay, like, I have this idea, I guess. Or I assume the idea for just the general clue hunt came first, and then he developed the characters who would take part in this clue hunt from there.
Yeah, I would be really interested to learn about the development process. And specifically what it's like to try to write a series with 14 other authors.
Yeah.
That sounds either really freeing or incredibly frustrating.
With like movies and TV series, there's often a writer's room, but usually you're like all in one room and you're developing the series and then you go off and write your subsequent episodes or whatnot, and then you come back together and sort of review each other's work. With this book series, I don't know if they did that.
Yeah,
or if they just kind of gave them a general outline and were like, okay, you get this book, you get this book, you get this one.
Yeah. It's hard enough to maintain consistency over 22 pages for 22 minutes. To maintain consistency over like hundreds of pages,
Yeah.
that's got to be tough.
Warriors was written in a similar way where there's actually a bunch of Aaron Hunters who write the Warrior series. And I watched a video recently that talked about the inconsistencies that happen in Warriors.
Interesting.
Oh.
Some of them are minor. Well, I guess they're minor details, but they are kind of important things to kind of get on the same page on. For example, just like cats' eye colors change sometimes within the same page because I guess they couldn't decide. And then they got confused about what the eye color actually was and forgot mid-page what this cat looks like. Other things are a bit more major where I guess some of the writers disagreed with plot lines that other writers came up with. So they're like constantly battling it out to try and
Book to book.
Yeah, they're like retconning things that they didn't like.
The Star Wars sequel trilogy problem.
Yeah, I don't remember most of this. When I was reading Warriors, I kind of didn't pick up on any of these. And when we reread the first series, I think that one was decently consistent. But I assume for later series, maybe it spiraled a little bit. But yeah, for this series, that's a lot of authors who gotta get on the same page. And for something like this, where it's mystery solving, because at least Warriors is like, it's a little bit slice of life-esque.
It's mostly drama.
Yeah, and it's drama, so as long as everything ties into the overall arc of the series, I guess you can add in smaller plot lines or whatever. But for the 39 Clues, the overall arc is a mystery. So if the books are inconsistent, then it's not going to make sense.
Yeah. To massively spoil some things about this series, I guess all you really need from a basic, like, major capital P plot is just the clue and the next destination / person. So all you need to do is introduce like a chemical element or like a rock or something, and then Russia, right? And then that's the only thing that you need to get to by the end. And
That's
so how
true,
you get there, you have a lot of freedom.
Yeah, and you can develop the in-between on your own.
Yeah. The actual like character arcs, we haven't read enough, Michael and I assume, to like fully get a grasp of any sort of character arcs. I mean, you can kind of guess where they're going based on the characters' flaws / weaknesses.
Yeah.
But overall, it really is a mystery.
Okay, so general vibes to start off. I have read the 39 Clues. I read it when I was a kid. I was looking stuff up about the 39 Clues, and the target demographic is ages 9 to 14. And I was like, yeah, as soon as I turned 14, I definitely stopped reading these books. But it was also around the same time that the first series ended and the second series began. So I kind of naturally fell off around that time. The characters I remember pretty well. Dan and Amy, they're siblings. They have the same age gap as my brother and I. So I think that maybe like added to my nostalgia of it. Just this time in my life where my brother and I were both reading the books. My mom was also listening to the audiobook with us too. So I actually remember the audiobook narrator's voice very distinctly. There's small plot points that I remember. In the first book, or no, in the second book? In one of the books, they reveal that their Uncle Alistair has a special cane that he can like hide messages and stuff in. And I remember that for some reason.
It's cool.
It is cool. I also just remember really wanting to go to Alcatraz because they go to Alcatraz in one of the books and they sneak away from the tour and they find a clue or whatever. So when I went to Alcatraz, I was thinking a lot about the 39 Clues. It was neat. It's a place that I went to. Oh, the interesting thing about these book series is it comes with an interactive component. I don't think you get that experience now because the website is not active anymore. But back when these books were coming out, if you bought the book, it would come with cards that you could then upload to your 39 Clues account. And that would give you extra clues so that you could participate in the clue hunt. That was, I think, the biggest draw was that they marketed it as you are also a Cahill and you are taking part in the clue hunt along with Dan and Amy. So that was kind of fun because like the book series was still coming out. We would eagerly wait for the next book to come out and then we try to get it as soon as possible. My mom didn't let us buy the books, so we mostly got them from the library, so we couldn't really participate in the card collecting aspect. Although you could just make an account and play the game that way. You just don't get sort of the added monetary benefit. But I think we bought maybe like one or two. And because we were discovering the secret of the clues along with Dan and Amy, it was a really unique experience to also play the game at the same time.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
And what a clever marketing strategy.
They're like, so we want the kids to buy the books. What if we put trading cards inside the books?
A trading card game that specifically links up to a computer game.
Yeah.
That has sort of like global prize winning potential.
Yeah. I was reading online that some people were saying that they would go to the library and just like scour the 39 Clues books to see if the librarians had removed the cards. And if they hadn't, then maybe they could like take the code and like basically take the cards for themselves. So a little bit of clue sleuthing in real life.
Wow.
It's a nostalgic series for you because it was both an interesting series, but also it had this big game component that was very engrossing to you.
Yeah. Oh, and recently they came out with graphic novel adaptations. So far, I think they've adapted books 1 and 2. So I think they're trying to like almost revive the 39 Clues. There's rumors that maybe they'll try and do some kind of screen adaptation of the series at some point.
Which would be incredibly ambitious,
Yeah.
considering the number of locations they go to.
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
I think it would be more realistic to make it an animated series.
Oh.
Yeah. I think an animated series adaptation of the 39 Clues would be pretty neat.
It does have that kind of vibe, frankly, with
Yeah.
like the on this episode of the
Mhm.
30
Mhm.
time to get a new medal.
Yeah. What about you guys? Had you heard of the 39 Clues before you read it?
Gino's nodding at me. Yeah, well, you know, the covers. The covers do not give away what the book is going to be about at all. It's like here's a color and here's some graphic design. And then you open up the first book and it's like, the fate of the world hangs in the balance. Oh, my grandchildren. Oh, but I can't help them. I'm going to die now. Mysterious man stands in doorway. Is it done? They'll never know. They'll never have a clue. And
Maybe
you're like,
you should narrate
they're
the
going to have
books,
39 of
Michael.
them, baby.
39 is a very specific number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you had just seen them in passing.
Yeah. But the vibes are good on the inside as
Yeah.
well.
I'd also seen them in passing. You know, you're a fan of Percy Jackson and you see written by Rick Riordan and some other people. You go, wow, a cool book. The description tells me nothing about the book. The cover tells me nothing about the book. Vague internet treasure hunt. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's the sort of thing you see in magazines and you go, that's like a cool toy, but I'm never going to get that either because it's too much effort to get it or because it's not quite as enticing as like my other toy, aka Percy Jackson.
That's very.
I already have this one book. Why do I need any other book? So this was my first time picking up the book too. And it definitely felt like a book for 8 to 14-year-olds. Not necessarily in a bad way, but in a, this was definitely made to sell a product. At least to me, that's how it felt, instead of via the passion of an author or of a group of authors.
That makes
If
sense. Yeah. Or like I said, like they came up with the plot first and then the characters.
Yeah.
They were like, we have an objective. It's to teach the kids about history and also sell books.
Yeah. Definitely a commissioned story. I think it has some utility in getting kids interested in world history and geography and also like maybe vague politics.
And like a tiny bit of science.
And a tiny bit of science.
The science, though, we'll get into that, but don't do this at home, kids.
And it definitely tracks along a lot of other books that attempt to do this with kids, like Horrible Histories or Magic Tree House. You know, like, we're going here. It's a cool person. We're going here. There's a cool person. It was also interesting. I don't know if we want to get this far into it, but Rick's writing style for the first one, I actually didn't really like. And I actually much prefer the writing style of the second one by like Gordon Corman, which is a really nice name to say.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I think the earlier chapters in book one were probably where most of the effort was placed. And I think that would make sense just because of how much there is to establish.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the rest of it is kind of just sort of going here and there.
I'd say the same
Traveling.
about book 2 as well, but book 2 sort of commits to the sort of like, we're going here, here's an event. We're going here, here's an event. We're going here, here's an event.
It's a little more like movie pacing.
Yeah. Whereas book 1, I guess it's difficult because you have to, as you said, introduce everything. But I don't know, like the prose and the dialogue felt kind of not lazy, but maybe not as much effort or heart was put into it as maybe some of his other writing.
Not as punchy.
Definitely not as punchy.
And there were things I liked about that.
And it definitely
times.
felt like it was checking off boxes.
Yeah.
Like, here's this character, here's his flaw, this is how he feels, next character. Flaw, here's how he feels, next character. Place, go. Place, like, you know, not that there's anything inherently wrong with that. But I was surprised that I liked Gordon Corman's writing more than Rick's, considering my affinity for Rick's books.
That's interesting. I actually felt a little bit of the opposite for the second book. I did read the second book really fast, though. So take this with a grain of salt. But I did personally feel like the dialogue in the second book didn't feel as authentic to the characters and just like them being kids. I don't know. I was just kind of like, they're talking a little weird.
They do argue a lot over seemingly nothing.
I think in book 2, they play up a lot more the sibling conflict, which is accurate to being siblings.
Yeah.
But there are some other parts where it felt like they were just like making jabs at each other for no reason, which again, like siblings do that, but I don't know. I just kind of, it got old after a little bit. A lot of use of the word dweeb in the second one.
Yeah.
They use that word constantly, and I was like, okay, we get it.
I seem to notice a pattern in the second book at times where the dialogue would go, Dan, younger brother, makes a snarky comment. Amy responds to said comment in a contrarian way. Dan responds to said comment in such a way where it's like used as like a ligament in conversation to say like, this isn't about that quirky thing you said, this is about this other thing. And the only reason there's that connective tissue is because the author says it is like, this isn't about gondolas, this is about clues. And the whatever thing we're after is what it's about.
Yeah.
And we got to go get it. And it's like, what was the... I don't know what exactly the point of this was. But then again, when you're like, it's for a younger demographic, and maybe you're like, we have to remind them every few chapters what we're doing here. I can see it.
That thing where the character is sort of alone waiting for something and they reflect on their journey.
Yeah.
And they're like, maybe it's all wrong. Maybe it's bad. Maybe I'm dumb and bad and it's all wrong. No, I'm good and it's right. And we're going to do it and it's good. I'm good. And then the door opens and then things happen.
Yeah, the scene begins.
To add context to my previous comment, I did audiobook the second book and I read the first book. And so that may have influenced my enjoyment. Yeah. Because, again, the narrator is really good.
Yeah. The narrator has really distinct voices for all the characters. So it helps you keep track of everyone too.
The dialogue that I cringed at in the first book sounded better spoken out loud in the second book.
I would agree. I did audiobook for both of them, and I feel like it worked better in the second book, some of the dialogue.
Yeah, maybe not like character conflict. Like, I agree, the sibling bickering became very old very fast, and I kept thinking back to Alex Hirsch in Gravity Falls, saying they're siblings, they like each other, they don't hate each other.
Yeah.
They're friends. So when they fight, it has to be about something real, not something petty. Yeah. And all the fighting felt petty in the 39 Clues, but I think generally the character dialogue was better in the second book. In the first book, where everyone kind of felt like a cliche, which I get if you're trying to introduce a bunch of characters very fast and make them distinct.
I think in general for this series, most of the characters are cliches.
Yes. But maybe something about hearing that instead of reading it, like, humanizes them a little more.
That makes
sense.
Know. Yeah. Because I don't remember bumping on it when I read it as a kid or listened to it. Maybe it was because the first book, I also just was like getting back into the nostalgia of like, oh, right, this series and like seeing all the things that like are kind of planted or like hinted at for later in the series that then I had to look up to be like, what's going on with this? So either way, it is written for 9 to 14-year-olds.
Do we want to talk about one of the major premises of the series, which is that every book seems to either focus on a specific person or location or both? And I think maybe they kind of fall away from that pattern later. It seems like the third book, they don't quite focus on a person as much.
Yeah, each book, technically, it focuses on one ingredient.
Yeah.
So at the end of each book, they find one of the ingredients or a big major clue, because later on they actually find the formula that will be used to apply these ingredients. So the first 2 books definitely focus mainly on one person who is tied to that particular ingredient. But then in other books, they start jumping around a lot more and bringing up a lot more different historical figures.
The first book is Benjamin Franklin. Second book is Mozart.
Yeah.
And the way they tie them together and sort of justify the Cahill secret society network or family mafia network or whatever it is, I thought was fascinating and I wanted to learn more about it. At the same time, it's very funny in this sort of way it stretches history and tries to glue these people together.
Yeah. Marie Antoinette's famous statement of "let them eat cake" was actually a coded message passed between Benjamin Franklin and Mozart.
Just
that
like
one was a lot. I was
crazy.
like, okay.
And it also got her killed.
Yeah. Okay, before we get too deep into it, though, I'll give a brief series/book summary for these two books to give a little bit more context to someone who maybe like me has not thought about the 39 clues in a really long time, like 10 years. Okay, so the 39 clues follows the story of two orphan siblings, Dan and Amy Cahill, who after the death of their grandmother, are sent on this clue hunt to try and find something that apparently will mean life or death for the fate of the world or something. At her funeral, they have the choice between giving up $1 million each or getting the first clue. And so most people who would
keeping $1 million or
yeah,
getting the first
Sorry.
clue. They don't have to sacrifice $2
They
million.
have to either give up $2 million and get the clue or keep their money and just move on with their lives. Most people take the $1 million because they don't care about the clue hunt. Or like Amy and Dan's great aunt, Beatrice, she wants nothing to do with the clues or with her sister's silly little endeavors. Dan and Amy, they decide, or they kind of come to the conclusion that perhaps Grace would have wanted them to go on this clue hunt. And so they take the risk. They give up $2 million, which for them as penniless orphans is a lot bigger of a sacrifice than for other people who are already rich and powerful. And they decide to go on the clue hunt. So the first book, like Jino said, follows them following the footsteps of Benjamin Franklin. With this first clue, it takes them to Philadelphia and then to Paris, and then they end up in the catacombs of Paris, which is where the titular Maze of Bones is. Important other people who are involved in this race are they have their uncle Alistair, who constantly wants to team up with them and then immediately backstabs them. Weird guy. They have Ian and Natalie Cabra, who are young, rich, spoiled kids who are also like really devious and cunning.
Like child prodigies.
Yeah. Then there's Irina Spassky, who is an ex-KGB spy. There's also the Holt family, who are just
buff.
Yeah.
And they
They're
all
just
wear
like a
purple
whole
jumpsuits.
buff family.
And they're willing to kill children for any reason.
And they're very American. The dad's name is Eisenhower.
Yeah. We can get into any of these characters if you want to. I've done some research about them.
Oh, there's also the wizards.
Oh, yeah, there's the wizards. There's Jonah Wizard, who's like famous pop star, like rich kid.
Hip hop stereotype.
Yeah, very
but maybe
stereotypical.
Maybe it's an act, but probably not.
It reads like it could be an act because it doesn't exactly flow super well.
Yeah.
It's not a great portrayal of a character. There's a lot of characters. Important thing to know is that they each belong to a different branch of the Cahill family. So the Cahills, there's 4 main branches.
The Janus, the Lucian, the Ravenclaw,
I will
and the
say-
abnegation.
At least they were a little bit more creative with their houses, in which they don't really box anyone into like one personality trait. It just means like, oh, a lot of artists and poets come from Janus because that's just like in their lineage.
Yeah.
But
It's about what they appreciate and cultivate, not like what they're born with.
mhm.
Though it does kind of talk about it a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Sometimes they do sort of like start boxing people into categories and then they immediately try to be like, no, we're a little bit different than that. Anyway, so like the Janus, they prioritize arts, creativity, talent. So Jonah is part of that branch. Then there's Thomas, who prioritizes athletics, navigation, and military leadership. This is all from the 39 Clues Wiki. So that's why I'm using these specific words. But that's where the Holt family comes from. The Lucian are a branch that prioritize leadership, spying, and poison.
And poison?
Yeah.
Mm.
They specialize in poison. So,
You could have looped that into spying.
yeah, the Cabras
Or
are
leadership.
part of this branch. Irina is part of this branch. Irina specifically has needles in her fingernails that she can immediately poison people with. And so they're known for like being very cunning and intelligent. Similar to what we talked about earlier, occasionally Dan will say like, oh, all Lucian people are evil and bad. And Amy has to be like, no, it's not like that. It's just that the couple of Lucian people we know are kind of out to get us. And then there's Ekaterina, and they prioritize being clever and inventive. So a lot of inventors come from Ekaterina. So Alistair is Ekaterina because he invented the microwavable burrito.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
But also the kind of humor you'd expect from this kind of book.
Yeah.
Like, haha, funny.
Yeah.
Burritos.
Dan and Amy don't belong to any of these branches, and they ask their grandmother's lawyer, Mr. McIntyre, like, what branch are we in? He's like, I can't help you with that. That will be revealed later that they're actually part of secret fifth family clan.
Sky Clan!
I wonder who it could be.
I don't know.
Is it the one mysterious name that we've been given?
The Madrigals? But anyway, so Dan and Amy don't belong to either of these clans, but somehow all of their other family members are obsessed with following them because they think either that Grace gave them sort of a lead on the clues because, like, they're her direct grandkids and she didn't adopt them, but she did spend a lot of time with them on the weekend, so she clearly kind of favors them. Or other people just know that Dan and Amy are smart and seem to be ahead of the game despite their clear disadvantages.
Or they just hate kids.
That's true. Yeah. Or they just hate Dan and Amy specifically, actually.
It starts to seem like that.
Yeah, no, there's some stuff going on, like years of family conflict and stuff that goes back to basically when the branches were founded.
5 whole years ago. No, I'm kidding.
Do they ever establish when the branches were founded?
Yes.
Because is it like vaguely like medieval times
It's
or
like
is it like
in 18 something?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't the 1800s. I was totally wrong. It was the 1500s.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes a little more...
Specifically, it comes from Gideon Cahill, who is the father of the 4 kids, the 4 plus 1 more kid, who eventually founded the branches. Gideon was the original developer of...
the microwavable burrito.
Yeah. All the way back then. No, he was the original creator of basically the serum that is what the clues are leading to. And we'll get more into him later.
I get you.
But his kids are the ones who created the branches. Anyway, so in book 1, Dan and Amy, they track down Benjamin Franklin. They end up finding the first major ingredient, which is iron solute, along with a mysterious vial, which Amy climbs up to the roof to get hit by lightning to actually activate it, in which I wrote the note, Amy is just like Remy from Ratatouille, for real.
Gotta get that lightning cheese.
Yeah, but the vial gets stolen by Ian and Natalie Cabra. I had to look up what this vial was because I was like, what is going on? It's actually the Lucian serum. So each branch actually has their own version of the serum, which again, maybe we'll get into later. There's so much background lore that I have to explain.
Yeah, it sounds like this really spills out.
Yeah. So then in book 2, they follow the second clue, which takes them down Mozart's footsteps. They have to find the journal of Mozart's sister, Nannerl Mozart, who hid some clues in her journal, her diary, and eventually that ends up leading them to this museum where there's a harpsichord that they play music for, and that reveals the second major ingredient, which is tungsten, and also 2 swords that will lead them to Japan in the third book.
Specifically Japanese tungsten? I just find that interesting because Japanese steel is notoriously bad, which is why they have to fold their swords so many times. So like a traditional katana is much more brittle than like a European sword just because of the quality of the metal. So I find it interesting. They're like, we need specifically Japanese tungsten, the worst tungsten we have.
Maybe it's like bananas in a shake, if you get too much, even a little just overpowers the taste.
I also just looked up iron solute, which doesn't exist. So
okay.
the science behind it is definitely questionable immediately.
The moment we started talking serums, I'm like, we're back in Divergent. I was like...
Yeah, so the whole serum thing isn't even revealed in these first 2 books.
I guess not, but apparently this is like...
But that's basically, if you look at the whole series in its entirety, It's all leading to basically what's called the Master Serum, which is a serum that literally gives you like enhanced physical health, but also like enhanced intelligence, creativity.
Fixes your back.
Yeah.
So
Basically,
it
all
makes
the things.
you
So,
like
all the things that all the branches value, it makes you really good at all of them at once.
makes
because
you the Uber Cahill.
each branch has their own version of the serum, which only gives you that particular branch's characteristics.
Oh, interesting.
The lore is fascinating because you have this guy, this dad, who's like, I've made the best serum.
But
and then
it's
all
actually not, because the original serum that Gideon Cahill made basically is very toxic and you will die if you drink it.
So then the kids are like, we're going to make it not toxic, but they also specifically prioritize. So they're all toxic.
No. Okay. So this, I guess we're just jumping right into it.
I'm just trying to justify why these kids are like, I hate you. Poison's all I need or something like, I don't know.
Okay, so the way that this all began, the whole clue hunt, was Gideon Cahill made a master serum that was initially intended to help cure the plague, because this was back like during bubonic plague times.
Drink some metal.
Yeah. So he created a serum. He drank it himself, I guess, to test it. And he quickly realized
tasted pretty good.
He quickly realized it's really bad for you. So then he decided this is not, like, no one should drink this. So he broke the serum into 4 components. 4 different serums.
I'm sorry. I just love the backstory of your secret society is a guy made a bad drink and was like, no one should drink this. And so people have been killing each other to make it again so they can drink it and realize it's a bad drink.
Honestly, that is basically what happens, because he distributes the 4 different separated components of the master serum to his 4 kids, but like doesn't tell them. I don't remember if he tells them like the reason why the master serum wasn't good. So
he just says, don't make the forbidden jungle juice.
Don't make this. Here's the recipe.
Well, then he ends up dying in a fire shortly after he gives it to them.
I just love how it's like, oh, that just sucks. Like, maybe I can make a medicine for this plague. Oh, that's awful. I gotta devote my life to making sure, like, the years I spent trying to make this never happen to anyone again. Fire, death.
Yeah.
Like, the secret origin of the most powerful families in the world. I made a bad one. I gotta make sure nobody makes it again.
I mixed all the Gatorades together. And it's not good for my tum-tum.
A lot of these ingredients you should not be ingesting, so I don't know what he was thinking
immediately
would
the
happen.
first 2, like iron and steel.
Yeah.
It's not like bad, but it is funny.
It's so funny.
So basically, the other kids get their version of the serum, and then a couple of the kids, one particular kid is like, but I want the master serum. And so he tries to get it, but then the fire happens, and so the other kids think that he basically like killed their father, and so it ends up fracturing the family, and they all go to different parts of the world. Then there's like some internal drama between some other siblings too, where like 2 of the siblings used to be really close, and then they had a falling out, and that's why their branches hate each other a lot more now. It's like a whole thing. But what they didn't know is that at the time of Gideon's death, their mother was actually pregnant. So the mother had a 5th child who started the Madrigal branch, and their whole goal is to create world peace and also reunite the Cahill family.
Oh,
so
pretty good goal.
She continued the work on the serum, but made it not toxic and deadly. So if you find all the 39 clues and all the ingredients, but you don't have the Madrigal serum, you will still die if you drink it.
Is it like you'll just die outright?
So
like
apparently,
you'll have a moment of extreme power, and then you're just like, ugh,
I can see every formula in the my tum tum. Oh no!
You just start taking poison damage.
According to the wiki, this is specifically what happens. It causes buccal syndrome, which is uncontrollable spasming.
Oh, okay.
Xanthopsia, which is yellow vision, and hallucination. And after 3 weeks, you will die.
Okay.
So you have a really bad 3 weeks and then you die.
So the fire didn't need to happen.
The fire, it turns out, is actually connected to another secret family
Oh,
that is revealed at the end of the
alright.
first series. Which,
Man, all these secret families.
yeah, so there's a lot of secret families, lots of secret societies. Like, they've been pulling the strings all around the world for generations. But in this first series, it's mainly focused on just the Cahill family and what the heck is going on. So yeah, that was a really long-winded explanation for the whole
And
series.
Nellie's there too.
And Nellie is also there.
Nellie.
We love Nellie.
Nellie are the siblings,
Au pair.
which is French for babysitter?
Basically a nanny.
Yeah. And she is in a lot of credit card debt.
Yeah. She basically takes on credit card debt to help the kids travel around the world because they need an adult. And social services is after them because their Aunt Beatrice basically disowned them. And so now they're on the run from social services and they have no money. So Nellie has credit card debt.
Nellie's just going into fraud.
But it's okay because if they win the clue hunt, she will get paid.
Theoretically. In really bad
Because
soup.
they don't even know, they don't even really know what the final prize is. They just know it's like wealth and power and something.
So I guess the whole idea is like, if you get it all, if you get all the Gatorade, including the magical Gatorade, or is that the Powerade that neutralizes?
No, you get all the Gatorade, then you get the original Gatorade, which tastes really bad, which is why they put all the sugar in it,
Right.
which neutralizes any sort of health benefits Gatorade would give you.
So once you get that, I guess the idea is you become like the most powerful person, like as an individual, like your smarts and your artistic potential and your strength is like maxed out, so you can just take the world for whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can make an adaptation of Cats. That's good.
See, I hear that, and I would be like, if I was Nellie, I'd be like, this better pay off fast. Because my credit card debt is real right now. I don't have a year for you to be like, let me get my small business off the ground. It's guaranteed to succeed.
Yeah.
I know exactly which
like,
crypto will bust.
I know that their Aunt Beatrice was like, yes, and I'll steal all the money that your $1 million accumulates in interest, and I'll use it. Ha ha ha. And then
Which she said directly in front of a lawyer.
Yeah. Crazy. But like, it's $1 million versus a trip around the world I have to pay for myself that I could die on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I take the $1 million, I think.
I think it's like Dan and Amy start out at the bottom. They're like, we already have no money.
Yeah, you got to like lock them into a situation where it's like, not only would the money be taken away from you,
and you'll be stuck with your Aunt Beatrice for the rest of time. I mean, maybe not the rest of time. Amy will turn 18 in 4 years, so.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. If she doesn't die before then, my gosh.
a lot of murderous intention.
Yeah.
So the serum, the original serum, worked but was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so we split it up into 4 serums, which also work but are bad?
No, those are stable and work. So what is presumed is the 4 siblings drank their serums, because it does specifically say on the wiki that they can pass on those traits to their kids.
Oh, okay.
So that's why like
Oh.
all the branches are naturally predisposed
So it
to
is
be good at
genetic.
certain things.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the founders drank the serum and thereby passed on those genes.
Okay, so we made 1 serum that works but is bad, split it into 4 serums that work and are good.
Yeah.
But if you combine the 4 serums back into the 1 serum that's bad and then add a secret extra ingredient, it becomes the best serum that's really good. And that's what they want.
Yes.
Okay. Why can't they just drink the 4 serums that are good
One at a
one
time.
after the other?
Because I was also thinking about that too. I was like, why didn't they just combine their 4 serums at the beginning? It all comes down to family drama. So I was slightly wrong here. The reason why they couldn't just combine all their serums is because there's specific ratios of each branch serum that make up the master serum. So regardless, it would have been difficult for them to figure out. I talk more about this near the end of the episode, but I wanted to add this here for now. Technically, they could have worked together and like figured out what the heck was going on, but because they don't like each other, they just like couldn't work it out. And then the formula for different serums has been lost over time, which is why they have to go on this clue hunt. Members of the Cahill family have been looking for these clues for a really, really long time. Like, that's apparently what Benjamin Franklin and Mozart were up to, was they were just trying to find clues to, like, make a serum.
Mozart died looking for these clues, basically, is the insinuation.
But Grace seemingly found some kind of through line through them all and is now like, all right, here you go.
Yeah. So
39.
Grace is part of the Madrigal family. I think she was like the head of the Madrigal family until she died. And so she decides, this is where my memory of the series gets fuzzy, but I think the actual plan was like, I'm going to basically like facilitate an actual revitalization of the clue hunt where like multiple branches know about it, and it's not just like a couple guys like looking for clues and not communicating with other people. And so I think she was hoping that with their combined efforts, it would A, help bring the Cahill family together, and B, they would actually figure out all the ingredients necessary for this master serum. Yeah. It does work. By the end, the Cahill family is reunited. So
that's impressive considering,
everything.
They tried to kill Amy and Dan in book 1.
Yeah.
And 2, and presumably 3.
Yeah, they just keep trying to kill him.
Like, they try to blow them up with bombs, like, twice. Like,
I know, it's really
and bury
intense.
them alive.
Yeah.
That was crazy. I was like, I would be freaking out if my relatives were like, so we brought a cement truck.
Yeah.
And we're going to bury you in cement. And you're going to die there. And I'd be like,
Whoa.
Get me out of here. Yeah. They also have a cat.
Oh, yeah.
We
Saladin.
love Saladin. Saladin is a very picky cat who only eats red snapper until he discovers the joys of canned cat food.
Processed food. Does Saladin have any special abilities eventually revealed, or is Saladin just there for...
He's a cute little boy.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's just a cat.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I love it.
He does get a tracker planted on him in book 1. But after that, he's just a cat.
Hell yeah.
Okay. This is going to be one of those episodes where I just spew information.
No, that's fine.
So the deal with the Madrigals is, at the beginning of the series, when Dan and Amy start going on this clue hunt, the lawyer, Mr. McIntyre, basically tells them, Grace said to beware the Madrigals, which is very ominous.
Yes.
And then they're constantly followed around by this man in black who is always at the scene of the crime anytime they almost die. So they're like, okay, it feels like this guy is out to get us. And the Madrigals are up to no good. But it's actually a veneer. The Madrigals aren't actually evil, and they're not trying to kill Dan and Amy. They're actually putting Dan and Amy through a series of secret tests to make sure that they can become Madrigals. So in order to become a Madrigal, you have to go through like a series of tests, but you can't know that you're being tested. So, yeah.
That's clever.
What ends up happening later in the series is Dan, Amy, and Nellie become Madrigals.
Hey.
And they're then bestowed with the ultimate goal, which is to reunite the Cahill family. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's neat. But that's why like they're being followed around by this guy who turns out to be Grace's brother. And he's just kind of like, if I'm remembering correctly, he's the one who has to like monitor to see if they're like fit to become Madrigals or something like that. The main thing is Dan and Amy are on this quest to find the clues, but secretly the Madrigals have their own agenda for
World
Dan
peace.
and Amy. Yeah. It's said that the Madrigals are responsible for creating like
the microwavable burrito.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Peace organizations like the UN, and a lot of Madrigals are Nobel Peace Prize winners, stuff like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
So they're not doing a great job.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting
they're
at.
1/5 of the ultimate issue, I guess, because the other 4 groups
And
are...
also the other 4 groups mistrust the Madrigals. The thing is, like,
and
the
one
Madrigals...
of those other groups has poison, apparently, on their list. That's a pretty distinct, like, middle finger to the Madrigals.
Yeah.
Our goal is world peace. Ours is poison.
It's interesting because the Madrigals have been working behind the scenes for a while, but the other branches think the Madrigals are actually like this evil organization, which turns out there's another evil organization that was actually doing that all along, but there's a lot going on in these series.
It sounds like it, especially since apparently the hunt for the 39 clues is just like series 1 of 4 or whatever.
Yeah, so at the end of series 1, they find the clues and the serum, but they end up destroying the formula to prevent it from falling in the hands of Ian and Natalie's mother, who you haven't even met yet, but she's actually kind of like the big bad later in the series. She sends her kids out first to sort of like be her minions, but then they they start becoming nice people. And so she just owns them.
Oh.
And she's like, I'll do it myself. And
then she grabs the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah. Yeah, so she joins the clue hunt. By the end of the series, Dan and Amy find the master formula and they end up destroying it so it doesn't fall into her hands. But because Dan has a photographic memory, he is the only person who knows the serum now. So in later series, what happens is the Cahill family is reunited. I think Dan ends up making like 2 versions of the serum. One that gets destroyed and one that someone actually drinks. But then she dies shortly after. So now it's like no one's got the serum. And then in the 3rd series, apparently Amy drinks a version of the old serum, so the bad one. So the whole 3rd series is about them trying to make the antidote. So that Amy doesn't die. And I don't know what happens later on.
Wild.
Yeah.
I just imagine it's like things are fine. It's like early in the morning. Amy's like squinting through like the dawn light and just like pawing for like, where's my juice? Where's my juice? And like right next to the orange juice is like a vial of like bad serum, do not drink. And she grabs that accidentally and is like, oh.
That would suck. No, that's not how it happens.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, now I'm not going to read the 3rd series unless it happens exactly like that.
Scholastic hire Michael Keane to rewrite this 3rd series of the 39 Clues.
Don't. I'd have to read a lot to get there.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
I've said this before to you guys, but the implications of all the famous people are related, I guess after a certain point, and they're all secretly in cahoots, raises a lot of questions and a lot of don't think about it, I guess, for this kid series. The one that I consistently mention to you guys that is also brought up a lot is Van Gogh, who famously had a very difficult life and died in a very tragic way.
Yeah.
And then the Janus branch is like, yes, and Van Gogh painted this one just for us, the real Starry Night, because he was on our team.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and you left him to die? Like, what was that about?
Yeah, the implications are interesting.
Specifically in that second book, the whole like, here's the Janus like headquarters, the art gallery where all the artists actually put their finished works, and all the other finished quote unquote works out in the world are just like rough drafts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I guess we're like retconning the like personalities of all of these artists to be like, only my family gets to enjoy my work.
Yeah, it's very
Forget the public.
It's very much like, art is the finest expression of humanity. But not for you.
I mean, if you wanted, I'm sure you could imagine, you could be like, well, what if it's the organization of the family taking the true works and replacing them with a copy because they want to hoard it?
They've been corrupted
Yes.
by their lust for paint.
Art. Yeah.
Yeah, it basically says that all these famous people had their respective pursuits, but what they were really going after was the 39 clues. Which I guess maybe it's some of them put more effort into the hunt than others, but it puts a weird spin on like world
Everything.
conflicts. And because then I think they maybe get into it later in the series where they say like world conflicts were also caused by fighting between Cahill members.
Which is an interesting through line between the Percy Jackson series and this one.
Yeah. Like, the demigods are all world leaders who started world wars and don't think about it too hard.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot that you can critique about how this series handles world events.
But it's also
But it's like
for the demographic,
Yeah.
it's like, that's not the point.
at the time, the idea that you might be related to someone famous was pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was mainly the draw. Like even Amy is like, wow, like it's so crazy that we're actually related to all these famous people who like did these amazing things. Maybe I could do something amazing with my life if I'm related to these people. So I think that's kind of like the overall draw. I do though think it's really funny because on the wiki there's examples of famous people who are in these branches, and I wrote down some of the ones that
I want to know.
were particularly interesting. So in the Janus family, like Jino said, Van Gogh, Mozart, Steven Spielberg is apparently a Janus.
Okay.
I wonder how he feels about that.
Yeah. Daniel
surprise.
Radcliffe
All right.
and Justin Bieber.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They basically just took famous actors and musicians, and they were like, yeah, the kid's like Justin Bieber right now. Let's make him a Janus.
I mean, if we're talking purely about like the lore of a fictional world and not about these real people with real lives, you could spot a Janus if they were Nepo babies.
Yeah.
I guess.
'Cause-
unless you're
Well,
Van
even
Gogh.
Jonah Wizard says he feels like his career
I
is
don't know
because
enough
of his
about Van
mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's like on the Janus Council, basically.
Because it feels weird to me if you have this like powerful connected family, if you had a branch of them that were disconnected and then produced like a famous artist, and then the Janus would kind of just scoop them up and claim them like a Jedi would. Like, I feel like you could probably, if once you knew about it, you could just spot like the lines of the Janus by just following powerful artistic families or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of just like, and here's one popping up randomly, and here's one popping up randomly, and here's one popping up randomly, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense of it, I don't know enough about any of these people.
I know. It's once you start getting into the weeds, it's like, but wait.
Yeah.
But how would, whatever.
They also
I
said
install you.
Snoop Dogg was a Janus as well.
Probably.
mentioned that one
It's
in the
not on
second
my
book?
list, but yeah.
If they didn't list it, he certainly
mean,
is
No,
now.
they listed Snoop
They
Dogg.
basically,
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
it's like weird because it's like kind of to be assumed that any famous person is probably a member of the
Cahill.
Cahill family. And you're like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
There's no way all of these people are related. But at this point, it's basically like everyone in the world is related. So, okay. So then the Thomas branch, there's like Annie Oakley, Neil Armstrong. This was weird. Okay. Apparently, Lewis and Clark were part of this branch and also Sacagawea.
Huh.
Which I was like,
How does that work?
Don't think about it.
I was like, that's
I'm going to think
kind
about it.
of concerning.
I guess they were like, she did get them to the other coast.
Yeah.
So like,
But
so we want all the cool people in our imaginary family club.
well, okay, here's something. Nellie is not genetically related to the family,
Yeah.
but she's inducted into it anyway.
That's true.
So maybe-
there's ways you can join the branches through marriage and other
Yeah.
ways.
So you could justify maybe it's not literally
Blood relation.
blood. I mean, obviously there is a genetic aspect to it
Mhm.
because of the serums, but maybe also over time the families have also just accumulated all the best people
yeah.
in
Yeah.
their respective fields,
That's true.
which I don't think is intended in the book because they justify that the Japanese warlord / emperor, no, not emperor, famous samurai was also in the Cahills because his dad was white. Surprise.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, he would. I think they get into or they discover this historical figure in the third book who is literally like the firstborn son of one of the founders. I guess what happened is one of the founders moved to Japan after the family had their falling out and then
Okay.
like started his family there.
Mm.
So
All right.
weird.
Yeah. If they had went with that, like the families can induct people, then yeah, I would buy that. But the
Yeah.
fact that I don't think they actually go that direction raises a lot of questions.
But I assume because none of these family members are like intermarrying, so people can still join through marriage, I assume.
Yeah.
Well, because like Jonah's father.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He talks about how he feels like less powerful because he's not
He doesn't
born
have
in
the clearance.
Janus.
Well, they don't consider him Janus. He's
Yeah.
not in their databanks at all. He's only
Oh,
there because
right,
of his
right,
son.
yeah. Okay, so maybe you can't marry in then.
So then
except
that
for
that
being a
establishes.
magical.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I've already forgotten all this stuff.
Well, there's a lot going on.
Okay, for Lucians, Anastasia Romanov, Napoleon, Teddy Roosevelt, Queen Victoria, Isaac Newton, Obama,
Obama.
Marie Antoinette.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ekaterina apparently had Alexander Hamilton, Nikola Tesla, Marie Curie, Einstein, Oppenheimer, Steve Jobs. This isn't the full list that's on Wikipedia, but I wrote down the names that were particularly interesting. Like Obama.
Poison. The poison for
It's-
Cusco.
When you
Sorry.
have a branch of your secret society family that's all about great leaders, that branch is inevitably going to fall to infighting because you've raised these leaders,
Yeah.
or even just like within like one political system, you're gonna have like people with opposing viewpoints who are going to start hating each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that line of work is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
That's why they added the poison, I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't want to hang out with them. They're probably always constantly killing each other.
Well, yeah, that's why, like, even Ian and Natalie Cabra and Irina, they're always fighting because they can't ever trust each other or work together.
What a terrible, terrible family to be a part of.
Yeah.
At least the Janus all seem to be united by their obsession with, like, art and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
They're not going to go to war with each other.
Then again, Benjamin Franklin seemed pretty chill with most.
You would hope so.
Well, aside from, revolution and all that.
Like, was King George also a Lucian? Like, were they just going at each other?
I don't remember the full list. And then lastly, famous madrigals, Amelia Earhart, Florence Nightingale, Harriet Tubman, and Shakespeare, randomly. I was like, why is Shakespeare here?
Some of these are kind of random.
The madrigal is kind of like,
They just sort
they
of...
just kind of catch everybody, I guess.
I mean, who's
And
to say?
Rick Riordan.
Yeah.
Wrote Rick Riordan.
Who's to say the madrigals aren't just like, and you're a madrigal? And Shakespeare's like, huh? And the madrigals are like,
Yeah,
we
what
claim
kind
you.
of test did Shakespeare have to go through to become a madrigal?
But he's like...
If their goal is
If
world
the family
peace.
started, and when did the family start?
1500s?
So in 1507, Gideon drank the master serum, which was not perfected. And that's it.
He drank the bad juice and was like, don't drink this. That's still so funny. I think the way you delivered
drinks this. Not because, it'll put the world at risk, but just, no, it's bad.
It's a bad juice. I'll give it to my kids.
It's like, you drink a different poison, but it's like, it's like worse.
Yeah.
Just takes more time.
I put a bunch of rocks in this drink. It's not working out.
I put the worst tungsten in this drink. I thought it would take the edge off, because normally the tungsten I drink is, really tart, but apparently bad tungsten.
Bad tungsten.
Grandpa, are you okay? I made the bad juice.
Relatable. A couple of things I found interesting. I also skimmed through the graphic novel of the second book. Nellie, to me, is the character I like the best.
Mm-hmm.
Just because she's not actively trying to kill anyone, and she's also not a young child who seems to feel the need to bicker constantly without any sort of real motivation behind it besides being a child. And she's also incredibly competent.
Yeah.
The graphic novels make her more competent by truncating scenes that would be very boring to look at in pictures and replacing them with Nellie fixing a problem by being a young adult, which I think is very fun. For example, in the second book, there's a situation where the kids hide some parchment on a yacht, or no, on like just a fancy boat.
Yeah.
And then the boat leaves and they're like, oh no, our papers. And the boat comes back with a whole wedding on it. And they're like, oh no, our papers still because the wedding venue has it, or this wedding has them.
Yeah.
And then the wedding just leaves. And then the kids get their papers. And so I guess the only thing they lose is time. But in the graphic novel, the wedding doesn't leave the boat. It stays on the boat. And Nellie infiltrates the wedding by just being very confident and also a young adult who looks like she belongs there.
Yeah.
And she just dances up to the pillow, grabs the papers out of them, and leaves, which I
Nice.
thought was a really great improvement.
Yeah, I wanted to read the graphic novels because I heard that they made changes and I was curious about it, but I only got through like half of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
My only complaint so far is that it seems like the kids have already bonded with Nellie a lot. Whereas in the series, it actually takes them a little bit of time to fully like trust Nellie. Because at that point, she's only been their au pair for a little bit. Whereas in the graphic novel, she's been their au pair for a little bit, but also they just love her already. And she's already part of their sort of found family right away. But
It's harder to do that sort of character development when there's so much plot and it's pictures.
Yeah. So I understand why the graphic novel shortened that and just like made it easier to digest all of it. But I do miss a little bit of, I don't know, like I kind of liked how they kind of had to like really persuade Nellie to like come with them in the first book.
Because it's a crazy ass.
Because it's crazy. She's in college. She's got her own life. This was just supposed to be like her summer job or something.
Yeah.
And she didn't expect to get caught up in all this. So it feels more realistic to me the way that happens in the book. But I understand why they changed it for the graphic novel. Because there's no time to get into all of that.
So much credit card debt.
Yeah.
It hurts every time
They also
talk
don't
about it.
address that in the graphic novel. Oh, yeah. The one thing was in the graphic novel, because at first they're like, we don't have money, but we need to go to Philadelphia and then later Paris. What do we do? And they end up just finding like a wad of cash in their uncle's jacket, which they got from him somehow. He like gives Amy his jacket and she wears it for most of the first book and then gives it back to him. But they get just like a stash of bills from him. In the book, what happens is they go home, they pack their bags, and then Dan takes his baseball cards collection and says he'll pawn them off to get the money. Just like character-wise, it's like a really big moment for him because how old? He's like 10. He's like 11 at the start of the book. His most valuable possession is his collection, but he's willing to give that up to help them on their journey. They also take like a jewelry box from Grace, which they sort of carry around with them for a bit, and I think eventually they start selling it off for additional money. Whereas in the graphic novel, they're just kind of like, we ran out of the money that we took from Uncle Alistair, so I don't know what we should do now. And it's just kind of like, ooh, like that's going to become a problem later on. But I kind of did miss that from the book series.
The logistics of kids traveling around, basically unsupervised, although in this case supervised.
Yeah. I just think like Amy and Dan's poverty in relation to the other teams is downplayed a bit in the graphic novel. Whereas in the books, they sort of shine more of a light on it and how much of a disadvantage they are at compared to everyone else.
Yeah.
Dan and Amy, to me, are very easy to root for because you just feel for them.
Yeah.
And you want them to succeed because everyone else in their family kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And they also have a lot of money.
Unlikable.
Yeah.
It's a really classic setup of the whole, they're orphans and they live with their rotten aunt.
Yeah.
But they have a shining moment of joy going to their grandmother's estate on the weekend.
I was trying to look up, like, why doesn't Grace adopt them? Because even Amy is like, why did Grace not adopt us? And why does she leave us with Aunt Beatrice, who barely gives us enough money just for like clothes and basic necessities?
Yeah.
And I feel like I remember it being something like Grace didn't want the kids to fall under the scrutiny of their other relatives who do know about the clue hunt or like kind of are suspicious of like Grace and her search for the clues. Because actually, like, the reason why Amy and Dan's parents died is because they were on the clue hunt and other family members got wind that they might have discovered like a big clue. So they went to their house to demand that they give them the clue and they refused. And so then Isabel Cabra, she set the fire to as like retaliation. Then what happened was, well, initially they all got out. They actually all escaped from the fire, but their dad went back into the fire because he was looking for something important, which was this poem that had a clue on it. Not like a big clue, but just like a small clue that would lead to something else. It turns out Alistair had stolen it earlier that day. And so Arthur, their father, ran in to look for the poem and it was already gone. And so he was gone for a bit and then their mother ran in to go find him and they both died as a result. So that's why Alistair keeps following the kids around and being like, I kind of want to help
nice,
you.
But also a little...
Yeah, because he feels bad. Like he can't, I think he recognizes part of the reason why their parents died is because he took that poem, but at the same time, he's still like
a duplicitous kind of guy.
He's an interesting guy, but this might be totally wrong. I tried to find stuff about it, but like it's not really on any wikis. But I feel like it was because Grace was like, oh, I don't want the other families to go after Dan and Amy just because I'm like on the clue hunt. I want to protect them from the hunt for as long as possible.
She wants the others to think that they're very out of the loop.
Yes.
Which kind of sort
but
of
then
doesn't
at the
quite
end,
work.
Yeah, because then by the time they start the clue hunt, everyone still thinks that Dan and Amy have an edge because they were Grace's favorites and they saw her every weekend. I was like,
Grace, you hamstrung them.
Yeah, you needed to like fully distance yourself if you wanted like the full effect of that protection. I don't know. But I could also be wrong. That might not have been the reason. I just feel like I remember something about that being revealed.
Hey, listener, write in if you remember the reason.
Please tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Another thing, if we're talking about adaptation, the audiobook, I don't know if the books had this. Maybe I just didn't flip to the end of the book. But the audiobook, at least for book 2, had a fully sound designed after credits scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For book 1 as
well.
Book
1, the audiobook has extras, which are like little like Or
I
I
was
know that the one in
confused at
book 1 is about Grace when she was hunting for clues. So I don't know what the one in book 2 is.
Same thing. Yeah.
Okay, so I assume all the audiobook extras are following Grace's journey, which is pretty neat. I think that's what is so cool about this series to me is like they fully committed to like the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was like, okay, if you buy the books, you get the cards, which give you extra clues. And then if you listen to the audiobook version, you get the extra bonus hints or like story tied to it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just being like, here's a book and you're going to read. Like, I understand like part of it is obviously monetary because they wanted people to buy the audiobook and also buy the books or whatever. But I don't know. The experience for kids is so cool. And I think that's why I remember the 39 Clues so well, as opposed to like some other series of like similar nature that I read when I was a kid, was because I was just like, oh yeah, like the world that you got to live in and join was really cool.
It makes your everyday life feel more mysterious and more exciting, even though it is just a story.
Yeah.
And
So-
if that's not the goal of all great fiction, then I don't know what is.
But yeah, I thought that was really neat. I don't remember. Well, we did listen to the audiobook, so I assume I also heard the extras, but I don't remember them at all. But
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
In book 2, she gets arrested by the French police
Ooh.
for stealing the diary, Mozart's sister's diary.
Oh.
And she was found in the bathroom, quote, with a knife, unquote, which she means was cutting pages out. And then the lawyer character runs in and whispers something to the judge, and then she helicopters out because of diplomatic immunity or something.
Wow. Grace Cahill, very powerful.
It was cool, though. It was like a full-on radio play.
Yeah.
Like, no narration, all dialogue. It was cool.
Wow.
Wild.
Audio dramas. Ooh.
Listen to
I
Ghost
really
Inspectors.
I do think an audio drama adaptation of the 39 Clues would be pretty neat, too.
Yeah.
So, Scholastic, if you ever want to do that, hit us up.
I do have one question that I know there is no answer to, but the second book specifically felt like the author went to Europe, kind of poked around all the Mozart sites and went, and then wrote down the adventure sort of in the order in which he poked around the Mozart sites, because the way they were described kind of felt, it felt like the author went in there and went, oh, wow, this cave's dark. And they wrote, the cave was very dark, you know? Or like, there were lots of tourists. Oh, there were lots of tourists. Yeah. I wonder if that's another reason to write 39 Clues is you can go on trips around the world and then write them off as business expenses because they are research.
Yeah.
So,
I love the idea of like Rick Riordan getting a group of friends together and being like, all right, I'm going to give you a crash course on writing novels, and I'm going to help you. I've got this master plan. Scholastic approached me. We can all go on a global trip.
Scholastic is going to pay for all of our trips around the world.
He like unfurls a map, and there's a bunch of like pins on it. And he's like, all right, we're all going to pick. We're
where do you want to
gonna
go?
Draw straws, right? And then you pick which place you want to write about, and then you get to go there. They're all like jostling for like Hawaii or whatever.
Yeah. That'd be pretty sweet if I was an author.
That would be sweet.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Okay, one last thing I wanted to talk about is I just think the 39 Clues captures a specific moment of time really well, which was the time before smartphones existed, but we had computers, but there were no smartphones.
Like Google was just getting powerful.
Yeah. And I think that if there was an adaptation of it now, they would have to up how technology is involved in all of this by a lot. I think in the graphic novel, they do some of that. Like they still go to the library, but like Dan for some reason downloads a blacklight reader app on his phone, which is not real.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. Also, like one of the biggest advantages that the Cahills have is Dan's photographic memory. Like the amount of times they lose a clue and Dan's like, don't worry, I've got it in my brain.
Versus take out phone, snap picture.
And they could just take a picture. I don't think it would be the same. Like, I almost feel like if they did an adaptation, I would want it to still be set in that very specific time in the early 2000s or early to late 2000s.
I would almost advocate that if there was a visual adaptation, they set it in the 90s.
Ooh.
They actually pull it back because air travel was a lot less restricted in the 90s. And you could get away with having like a couple kids just like running around the world like that. I feel like it was a little easier in the 90s.
That's true.
At least from like an American perspective.
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point, Jino, because even in like 2008, air travel would have been difficult. Yeah. Nowadays, when you travel, they like take your picture now. They don't even scan your ID.
Yeah.
At some places. So there'd be records of every single place that Dan and Amy went. And social services would find them real fast.
But if you set it in the 90s and you really commit to that aesthetic,
then you can have Britney Spears playing all the time.
Yes, but I think it also like evokes the sort of like classic adventure.
90s? I am so out of touch.
I don't know. I'm also out of touch. But like I feel like if you set it in the 90s, it kind of evokes that classic, National Treasure vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which, speaking of National Treasure, they have their moment where they go inside the museum in book 2 and they're like, I'm going to steal the diary of Mozart's sister. I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, they already stole it. We got to try again.
Yeah.
They're like, we got to steal the diary. And then they have a whole existential crisis because stealing is bad. And they're like, we're not bad, are we? No. We're stealing for a good cause.
Nellie's like, you guys are on a treasure hunt, but you're not crooks.
Yeah.
And then immediately she's convinced to like help them steal and infiltrate Jonah Wizard's apartment.
Just steal the diary. Come on, guys.
I think it's because like they're trying to maintain this like Dan and Amy are different from their competitors. Like their competitors will lie and steal and cheat and kill for these clues, but Dan and Amy won't. But I think from what I remember from later in the series, they do have to confront it a little bit. Like I think at one point someone is like, for this clue, you got to sacrifice, or someone's going to die if you want this clue, and they have to like wrestle with that, which is interesting. But yeah, I have fond memories of this series.
Yeah, I think if I read it as a kid, I really would have loved it. And it's interesting looking at it from an older perspective.
Yeah.
And like the sort of labyrinthine web of interactive material that they released and then has subsequently like vanished into the ether.
Yeah. Well, I just don't think you could get the same experience reading the 39 Clues now.
Yeah.
If you were a kid just getting to the 39 Clues, you might enjoy it, but you still wouldn't get the full experience that we had when we were reading it.
It would just be way too much effort to create a similar puzzle of scope and length for today's like web literate kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of effort companies have to go to make convincing ARG that isn't immediately like torn apart by the internet, it just wouldn't be practical.
Yeah.
A relic of its time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If these books came out nowadays, I think Dan and Amy would have an Instagram account.
Well, here's the thing. From a marketing standpoint, yeah. But in world, they definitely wouldn't be able to have phones, which is interesting, I think. Because I think if social services was looking for them and...
Oh, that's true.
And all that, I imagine they would be like,
well, in the graphic novel, they give them smartphones, which another point in the books was that they couldn't afford phones.
Yeah.
Because Beatrice didn't give them money and it didn't allow them to have cell phones. So they're fully reliant on Nellie's phone and her iPod.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan has a laptop, but that's kind of the extent of their technology, whereas their competitors have access to like much more advanced stuff. I don't know. It's just like if there was an adaptation now and they had smartphones, they would just give them smartphones and they wouldn't so much address. I mean, it's also like smartphones nowadays are so much cheaper too.
Yeah.
They could have a very basic smartphone that can access the internet, even if their competitors have like the latest model of whatever phone. Yeah. I don't know. It's just different playing ground. All right. That's 39 clues.
We only got to 2 of them.
Yeah. We only got to 2 clues.
I do have a question. How do they fit the rest of the 39 clues in what's like 6 or 7 books?
That's what I was trying to remember is like, I think the 39 clues is not like big C clues. Like there's smaller clues that lead to... Actually, are there 39 ingredients?
Iron solute, tungsten, green Play-Doh, a strand of my hair, me writing this ingredient list.
Okay, so I think there are 39 ingredients that make up the final serum. But I think they start finding them at more rapid paces, or they find people who have basically like already done the work for them. So it's like if Benjamin Franklin had discovered more than one ingredient, then they find like a couple at a time.
Dang, Ben Franklin could only figure out one ingredient.
I think they also start breaking into
in
more like branch strongholds where they have more clues about. I think a lot of the branches have a general idea of what some of the ingredients are, but they don't know the amount of each ingredient that they're supposed to put in.
Gotcha.
So they don't have the blueprint. They might have some pieces of the puzzle. Even because I just looked up, actually, because we were talking about like why didn't the 4 siblings just combine their serums together? It turns out the master serum it's like a portion of each version of the serum. So if you don't know the ratio that you're supposed to put in, you won't make the serum. It's like 1/8 of the portion of the Lucian serum, 1/16 of the Janus serum, 1/24 of the Thomas serum, 1/32 of the Ekaterina serum, and then 1/20 of the Madrigal serum.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like, that's why it's so convoluted, because it's not just like you find ingredients and put them all together. It's like, how much of each ingredient are you putting in? Also, apparently, when Dan makes the serum, he adds red M&Ms for flavoring.
I feel like it's going to mess something up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know about
Like, that's
that
a very
one.
kids book thing, but I feel like it's going to mess something up.
Anyways, so even Dan was like messing with the serum a little bit.
I mean, that's sugar and palm oil and cocoa.
That's true.
And like milk
I don't think-
byproduct.
If I was Dan, I would not mess with it. I'd be like, people died making this serum.
But that's
I'm
such a kid thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, this kind of looks gross. M&M's.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Drink up, sis. Oh no, the third series.
No, I actually got confused at first when I was doing research because I thought Amy drank the master serum that Dan made. And I was like, wait, so I thought the whole point was it's not supposed to be toxic, but she still starts dying. So I guess they're just all bad. Like, maybe you just shit. But it turns out, no, it's like some other guy starts like making the master serum, like the original OG Gideon serum. And then Amy has to drink that because like he threatens people. And she's like, okay, I'll drink.
Drink my bad juice or else I'll get your family.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for listening to us talk about the 39 Clues. If you read the 39 Clues and you have more information to add to the conversation, please comment, because I'm just one person and I did a lot of research really fast.
And if you know any of the clues, leave them in the comments for a fun prize.
The prize is the joy of participation.
Yes. And as always, if you have suggestions for what else you want us to cover, feel free to email us at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com or send us a message at nostalgiaclubpodcast on Instagram. And we also have our Mouse Knight Studios accounts. If you would like to follow us on there for all of our other shows, it's just at Mouse Knight Studios.
Listen to Ghost Inspectors.
Yeah.
An audio drama miniseries, wherever you get your podcasts.
Also, if you'd like to support the show, we do have a coffee account where you can leave us a tip, buy us coffee so that we can keep reading more books. Thank you.
And until next time, tag yourself. Which family branch are you a member of?
Ooh.
Poison?
Poison?
Burrito?
Poison, Burrito, Abandoning Van Gogh, and the other one.
No, and Buff.
And Buff. There was a family
Or
called...
are you just like a decent person?
Yeah.
Are you boring?
Or are you Shakespeare? No, literally, there was a family called the Holtz growing up when I went to my high school,
Ooh.
and they were all buff as hell.
Wow.
Wait, really?
Yeah, no, like when I read, like, oh, the Holtz rolled up, and they were all super athletic, I was like, wow, I know these people.
Maybe you really are a Cahill.
They were nice. They weren't.
Okay, that's
they
good.
weren't trying to kill people. They were nice
I hope
people.
not.
It was like aesthetically, they fit the Holt description.
Wow.
Exactly. So, but anyway, tag yourself.
That's fun. I think we would probably all be Janice,
Yeah.
Yeah.
given we are all in the arts.
Given we've all abandoned Van Gogh.
What famous podcasters are in the Janice?
I don't know. I feel like I could be pretty happy in Burrito.
I'm not an inventor, so I wouldn't be in Ekaterina.
Yeah.
And I'm not athletic, so... And I don't like poison enough.
Yeah.
I like puzzles. I don't know.
Puzzles are fun.
The puzzle of microwave this burrito. I feel like that's not a really good doesn't take a lot of work to invent the microwave burrito. It's kind of just like freezing a burrito and then microwave.
What? No, but at the same time, like, there are some microwavable burritos out there that don't microwave well.
So what he should have said is, I invented the well microwaved burrito.